What's up guys, welcome to another video where we're going to be talking about some of the news on Necromancy that I think are pretty big points to cover, as they could reshape the way RuneScape heads in the future. But also, there's a few other important parts as well that I wanted to just bring to your attention from the stream that was recently done by Jagex. Like I say, just because I think these are important bits to mention. So, with that being said, if you enjoy this video, please do sub to the channel, leave a like as well, and let's get started.
In terms of the group bosses, we are trying, if you were to turn up on your own, the boss, say, may have 100,000 HP, and you kill it, you get a drop. If you want to turn up with your friend, the boss will have twice as much HP, and you'll both get a drop. If you want to turn up with 2 of your friends, it'll have 3 times as much HP and 3 drops. Because we want you to be able to play with your friends, and we also know that when I go with Ramen, as an example, he doesn't want to necessarily do duo content with me because he knows I'll get the drop.
So the very first one I'm going to talk about in this video is going to be the whole boss scaling ideas that they've had for things like group bosses once Necromancy does release. They have confirmed that there is more than one Necromancy boss going to be releasing, and they have confirmed that at least one of them is going to be a group boss, or you can do this in a group, but you can also do it in a solo as well. While confirming this, they also confirmed that this will scale the way that Rakshas scales as well. So if you go with one person, for example, the boss may have 100,000 life points, probably more, but let's just use 100,000 for easy math. You would have 100,000 life points, and then it will scale up to 200,000 life points with 2 people, 300,000 with 3 people, 400,000 with 4 people, and so on. That way, you would be able to go to the boss with more people, and you won't just steamroll the thing into the ground. This, to me, is the best way of doing this. If you look at Raksha, doing Raksha in a group doesn't feel bad at all. Doing it in solo feels exactly the same as well, because there's just no difference other than one person's tanking him and one person's doing DPS. But overall, you're not skipping all the mechanics because you're in a duo. You would just be doing the same as if you're in a solo. In my opinion, this far outweighs the way things are done in places, for example, let's say at Karapak in hard mode. At Karapak in hard mode, if you go as a solo, then you get the full boss fight, it's got the exact same amount of health as if you go in a duo or a trio. If you go in a trio, you end up skipping the mechanics so freaking easily, the same in a duo as well, because you're getting a full extra person's DPS in there compared to what you would normally have in a solo. Now, personally, I do think that Karapak was designed to be a trio boss, and then obviously power creep and stuff made it so you could just skip everything. But overall, if you had him scale each time a new player joined, this would just make the fight feel a lot better. I really don't enjoy skipping mechanics a ton in a lot of places because it just feels like you're kind of missing out on content that should have been there. I do like the idea of actually dealing with mechanics and not being like, if I go with a friend, then this boss fight is just going to feel very, very bad. So if you go to Karapak in a solo in hard mode, it feels kind of good. It's a good boss, you get the mechanics, and if you can skip stuff, that just shows that you did a really good job with DPS, and it feels good that way. But if you don't, then you get the mechanics and you deal with them. You go over second person, and just because you have double the DPS, but the boss has the same health, you skip all the mechanics, and the boss feels super easy, super boring, and it just takes away from the experience. So I'm glad to see that they are going to be taking a look at the actual Raksha style that they did, where if you go in, it scales up, and you're going to have to do the exact same DPS as you would in a solo anyway. This is good in my opinion, and if they do this, and it just keeps feeling like the best way to do it, and people are happy with it, then I assume that they'll keep using this in the future as well. This is kind of similar with Zamorak too, of course, that the HP scales there with more people too. So I think this is definitely the best way to do it, unless you are specifically designing a group only boss, in which case you give the boss a ton of HP anyway, and just make it pretty much impossible to solo.
But I'll go throw the idea out there. It's fine. We spoke about, like, it would be cool if, for example, you could get Tarakets, like arm guard, as a weapon, like a tier 80, arm guard. It's an alternative weapon drop that would have its own special attack. That's the sort of thing, like if we were to go back and, say, for argument's sake, do that, we'd probably make Taraket do necromancy damage. We aren't doing that, by the way, but these are the sorts of things that we, of course, think about, how else we can introduce different equipment and stuff.
Another thing that was mentioned that could absolutely change the way a few things in the game are, is they said that an idea, that's just an idea, this isn't being done on release or anything like that, but the idea is definitely there, and it sounded like something, in my opinion, that they plan on or hope to plan on doing, and that is actual future boss reworks or like drop table reworks of like past bosses. The example they gave was Taraket, because someone asked the question of anything in game that was a necromancer, will they use necromantic damage to actually deal damage to the player? And they said that, of course, eventually the idea is to make Taraket deal necromantic damage to the player, which is awesome. And then they also said that there's also the idea and the possibility that they could possibly rework Taraket to allow us to get his actual weapon as a weapon for ourselves. So we could possibly maybe one day be seeing changes to the mechanics of the bosses, because it will likely change the fight a little bit if it's using different types of damage, but also drop table changes as well to include some necromancy related stuff. So this isn't off the tables, it's not being done on release, and they said we're not doing this yet, but like, it's possible to happen. What do you guys reckon? I think this is pretty cool.
Equipment you get at the beginning of the game as part of the tutorial that you can upgrade with you. As you upgrade it, it gets to a branching point at tier 70, which is when it becomes augmentable. I mean, this is more spoilers, but it's okay. Like, you know, like the arm guard gains a special attack. You have a choice here if you want to continue upgrading your equipment down the tank route, because gear by default is tank, or you can bridge and start upgrading down a power route. If you want to unlock, essentially, if you want to unlock more necromancy abilities, they're in a new talents interface. To access that, you need to perform rituals.
Yeah.
So.
And to upgrade your armor.
And to upgrade your armor.
Yeah.
The next part I wanted to talk about was going to be the gear upgrades. Now, of course, we know that we will be upgrading our gear through the quest line and the rituals, and they confirm that you will have to do rituals to upgrade your gear. That is how that is going to work. However, this is something that could be really, really important for the future of RuneScape, in my opinion, and I will make a video specifically on this once we get more news confirmed on it, and if I feel like there is actual reason to do this, because this could be absolutely great for the returning players, for the new players, and people who want to get into PVM but just don't have the money yet. Now, the reason I say this is because we know that you will be upgrading the gear through the quests, and from what it sounds like, this will not cost anywhere near as much as trying to buy out a set of tier 90 gear for range, magic, or melee. Now, we know to get tier 90 gear for those of the combat styles, it can be pretty damn pricey, and it is definitely something that people struggle to get. You see people PVMing with tier 80, sometimes even lower gear, and that's an issue because it makes it a lot harder to kill certain bosses. However, if they are going to be giving you tier 90 gear, and you're upgrading this with things like metal bars in game, you're going to be using some of the cheaper styles of magic gear, except maybe subjugations going up in price and stuff, but you're going to be using that. You're going to be using mystic gear, you're using the algorithm thread, which you can buy from an NPC in game rather than from the players if need be, so they're price controlled. You've got the wool from player-owned farms. All of this stuff won't be hundreds of millions of GP to obtain, from what we can tell, unless they add something in game to do this. It's going to be really expensive, which I highly doubt them doing, seeing as it's locked to quests. Like, you don't want to lock a quest behind needing to get 400 million GP, right? Like, that's probably not going to happen. Then this could be absolutely incredible for the future of RuneScape and for new players, returning players, people who want to get into PVM but don't want to spend so long grinding away at some boring grindy stuff to unlock some gear. If you're going to get tier 90 gear or even close to that without spending an absolute fortune, this is great. I have no problem with this, and a lot of people might be thinking this is going to devalue other tier 90 stuff. It might, but that's not necessarily a bad thing for keeping new and returned players into the game, in my opinion. Obviously, we're going to be getting the tier 95 stuff from other bosses, but hey, if you can get tier 90 gear, you can do most bosses in the game, or you can have a good chance of learning PVM without much issues. This just sounds great to me. Another thing they mentioned about gear is that you will be seeing some pretty interesting stuff in terms of once it reaches level 70, you will then branch off. You will either decide whether you want to do power armor or whether you want to branch off and do the tank armor style. And you can pick either of those and you can work towards it. Whether you can go back and then do the other style and have both, I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. I don't see a reason why not to. But they also mentioned that you will get weapon special attacks added as well along this upgrading process. So this is pretty exciting to me. I think it's really, really interesting on how they're doing it. And I do hope that it doesn't cost a fortune for new players. I really, really do, because I feel like getting people to the end game in this is just going to be pretty huge for the future of RuneScape. So I hope that's how it works.
You know, like we say, subject to change. Some incantations do, some won't. It depends on what they're used for and why. Like, if they're very specific for, like, there is an ability, an incantation that says on your next necromancy ability do X. There are questions why that makes more sense if you can only use it when you have the main hand equipped.
But Bone Shield is non-style specific.
Yeah, Bone Shield is non-style specific. You can just cast it, just like regular spells.
Finally, something the JMods covered was some incantations that you can get, which is going to be buffs. For example, being able to use your defense abilities without a shield that would normally require using a shield can be used off style. You don't have to only use these on Necromancy. So what they're saying is you can change your main hand weapon and you can still have those buffs on off style. But obviously this does mean that there likely will be some buffs are going to be for other styles as well, which will likely change the meta gameplay of RuneScape combat as a whole in some certain situations. For example, we wouldn't normally go anywhere in terms of high level PVM, high level bosses without a shield. It's just not something you would do. So the idea to me of like going to a boss and having this Necromancer ability to just not use a shield seems really interesting. And if there's other things like this that make it so that you can play differently, or maybe you get a buff here and there, or you just do things differently, I like the idea of this. I like the idea of a possible meta change to keep the game feeling fresh and PVM feeling different. If the meta of certain things changed a lot when you go to kill certain bosses, even if the bosses are the same, if the content's the same, if you're doing different things each time, if the play style is different, then it just keeps the game feeling fresh and alive, and this I think is important. So I do hope there's quite a few incantations that come along with this other than just using your shield, or not having to use your shield, should I say. I don't know. I hope there is a few things. Hope it doesn't completely make power creep insane, but we'll have to see what happens. So that's the main things that I wanted to put in this video and talk about, because I thought they were really interesting, and I've not really heard people talking about these as much as some of the other points, so I wanted to include them. But that being said, what do you guys think about this? Are you excited about all these sort of things? Was there anything on stream that you saw that was even more exciting to you? Let me know in the comments. If you did enjoy the video, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and wait, we're going to end the video on one more thing. Mod Doom said he may get in trouble for saying this, but we're going to clip him anyway and put it in the video and end the video on that. And it was about the release date of Necromancy.
Everyone's asking about the release. I'm going to say capital S, soon. And we're good, I think.